The Majestic Hotel was a rare gem among luxury hotels. Located in the heart of a large metropolis, it was a haven of opulence and elegance, where only the wealthiest and most influential people stayed. Its golden doors, always gleaming, welcomed an exclusive clientele, consisting of magnates, celebrities, and powerful figures. The grand entrance hall, impressive with its imported marble and crystal chandeliers, reflected the grandeur of the place. Among all the employees who kept the hotel running perfectly, there was one man who stood out: John, the doorman. John had been at the hotel for so many years that it was hard to remember a time when he wasn't there, warmly smiling at every guest who crossed those doors. Always impeccably dressed in his uniform, with a dignified posture and a genuine smile, John seemed more like a guardian than just a simple doorman. He knew every detail of the hotel, every hidden corner, and more importantly, he knew the stories of the guests. For many, John was the first and last person they saw when arriving and leaving, and he made sure that each of these interactions was memorable. But not everyone saw John with kind eyes. Richard, the receptionist, was an ambitious young man, always paying attention to details. He had started at the hotel a few years ago and had since worked hard, hoping to climb the ranks at the Majestic. However, there was something about John that bothered him deeply. Perhaps it was the way even the most demanding guests let their guard down in front of the doorman. Or maybe it was the fact that, despite his inferior position, John always seemed to have a special glow in his eyes, a satisfaction that Richard could never understand. As the guests crossed the hall, carrying their lives of luxury and power, Richard watched John with a mix of envy and disdain. To him, it was inexplicable how a man in such a humble position could be so happy and loved. And the more he watched, the more that happiness irritated him. In Richard's mind, John didn't deserve the respect and affection he received from the guests. Something had to be done. That night, as the hotel quieted under the stars, John remained at his post, always alert, always smiling. To him, the hotel was more than just a place of work. It was almost like his second home, a place where he could be himself, where his presence was valued. He greeted each guest by name, asked about their families, and did small favors without ever expecting anything in return. It was this simplicity, this authenticity, that made John the heart of the Majestic Hotel. But behind the scenes, while John continued his routine with the same joy as always, Richard began plotting. He didn't know how yet, but he was sure he would find a way to remove John from the picture. After all, in that world of luxury and appearances, Richard believed that only the smartest and most ambitious survived. And to him, John was an anomaly that needed to be corrected. Days passed at the Majestic Hotel, and the routine remained the same, but Richard's heart was growing increasingly restless. He watched John at every opportunity, trying to understand what was so special about that doorman. With every smile John offered to the guests, with every kind word exchanged in the lobby, Richard felt envy growing inside him, like a shadow he couldn't shake off. Richard began to notice details that hadn't caught his attention before. John seemed to have deep knowledge of the guests, as if he were an old friend of each one. He knew the names of their children, their birthdays, their personal preferences, and because of this, he always did something that surprised them. A coffee prepared exactly the way the guest liked it, a perfect restaurant recommendation, or simply a comforting conversation after a long day. John was indeed an exemplary employee. But to Richard, this excellence was undeserved. Determined, Richard set out to find a flaw, something he could use against John. If he could expose him, prove that the doorman wasn't as perfect as he seemed, maybe he could finally get the recognition he had always desired. Richard began to watch John even more closely, looking for any mistake, any slip-up, but all he saw was the same tireless dedication and joy in his work. But Richard was cunning. He knew that if he wanted to bring John down, he would have to create the perfect opportunity. So he began to sow small intrigues. First, he spread rumors among the staff, insinuating that John might not be as honest as he seemed. Subtle comments about how he was always close to the richest guests, how he seemed to know too much about them. Some colleagues started to question, others simply ignored it, but the seeds of doubt were planted. Richard didn't stop there. He knew he needed something more concrete, something that could seriously damage John's reputation. He began manipulating situations at the hotel, trying to set small traps. He switched room keys, altered reservations, and always made it seem like the doorman was at fault. With every small mistake that occurred, Richard made sure that the superiors knew that John was involved, directly or indirectly. Despite the traps and attempts to discredit John, he remained calm and unshaken. It was as if he didn't notice what was happening, or if he did, he didn't let it show. This enraged Richard even more, as he found himself constantly frustrated in his efforts. Then Richard decided it was time for something bigger, something that could truly cause John's downfall. Observing the reservations of important guests, Richard spotted an opportunity. One of the most influential magnates, known for his intolerance to mistakes and difficult temper, was about to arrive at the hotel. Richard knew that if he could make John appear incompetent or dishonest in front of this guest, the situation could escalate quickly. He began planning in detail. He discreetly altered the reservation, ensuring that the room booked for the magnate was different, far inferior to what had been requested. When the magnate arrived, there would be confusion, discomfort, and Richard hoped John would be the only one to take the blame. On the day of the arrival, Richard watched closely from the reception desk. John, as always, was at his post, ready to greet the guest with a warm smile. When the magnate finally arrived, accompanied by a group of assistants, Richard felt the moment approaching. He exchanged a quick glance with John, a look mixed with anxiety and malice, and prepared to watch his plan unfold. The majestic hotel reception was impeccable as always, but there was a tension in the air that few could perceive. John was at his post, waiting for the arrival of the magnate with the same cordiality as always. He didn't know that this would be a decisive day, one that would radically change his fate. When the magnate arrived, the hotel doors opened in a smooth motion, and John, with his usual smile, welcomed him. "Welcome to the majestic hotel, sir. It's a pleasure to have you with us." The magnate, a middle-aged man with a stern look, nodded briefly, already used to being treated with reverence. John stepped forward to assist him with his luggage, but quickly noticed the look of displeasure on the guest's face when he received his room key. "Is there a mistake?" asked the magnate, his voice full of authority. "This is not the room I booked." John was momentarily confused but kept his composure. He knew something was wrong, but he couldn't figure out what. "Let me check for you, sir. One moment, please," he said, heading to the reception to resolve the misunderstanding. Richard, who had been eagerly waiting for the plan to unfold, was ready. He handed John the altered documents, showing that this was indeed the room booked for the magnate. Everything seemed to be in order. John returned to the guest, trying to explain the situation, but the magnate was not satisfied. "This is unacceptable," he thundered, attracting the attention of other guests in the lobby. "I demand to be treated with respect. I didn't expect this from a hotel of this level." The words cut through the air like knives, and John felt a chill down his spine. He knew that his reputation, built over so many years, was being threatened. Remaining calm, he tried to offer solutions, suggesting an immediate upgrade or any other service that might improve the situation, but the magnate was unyielding. "This is incompetence. I want to speak to the manager now." Richard, who had been watching everything closely, seized the moment. He approached with a concerned expression, pretending to be surprised by the situation. "What's happening here?" he asked, feigning ignorance. John tried to explain, but Richard quickly interrupted him. "I'm very sorry, sir. It seems there was a mistake by our doorman. We will fix this immediately." The magnate, still furious, was taken to one of the best rooms in the hotel, but the damage had already been done. News of the incident quickly spread among the staff and reached the management. Confidence in John began to be questioned, and whispers of incompetence and carelessness started circulating. The seeds planted by Richard were finally bearing fruit. That same night, John was called into the manager's office. The atmosphere was tense, and the manager, a pragmatic man, explained that, due to the gravity of the situation, a drastic action would be necessary. "John, I deeply regret this, but we cannot risk the hotel's reputation. We need you to step aside for a while," he said with a sad expression. John accepted the decision with his usual dignity without protest, but something inside him was shattered. As he left the hotel that night, John felt the weight of injustice on his shoulders. The bright lights of the majestic hotel, which had once brought him comfort, now seemed distant and cold. He walked slowly down the sidewalk, his head held high but his heart heavy. Inside, Richard watched him leave, finally feeling that he had achieved what he wanted. The doorman was out of the way, and the majestic hotel was now, at least temporarily, under his control. O Majestic Hotel was in a state of apparent calm after John's departure. Richard had taken on a more prominent role at the reception, and the routine seemed to return to normal. However, John's absence had created a noticeable void. Some guests noticed the difference, and the quality of service seemed to have declined, but Richard did his best to keep up appearances. As days passed, a series of small problems began to emerge. The service was no longer impeccable, and some complaints started to come in. The magnate who had caused the initial commotion returned, and this time he was not satisfied with the hotel's situation. The bad impression he had spread began to affect the Majestic Hotel's business. On a cloudy morning, the manager received an important notification. A major investors' meeting was scheduled to take place at the hotel. It was a crucial opportunity for the Majestic, and the manager knew that the hotel's reputation needed to be restored immediately. There was only one problem: the absence of an essential staff member who had been responsible for many of the details that had given the hotel its distinction. While chaos unfolded behind the scenes, John, in his new routine, remained calm and reflected on his situation. In an unexpected act of generosity, he decided to visit the hotel to see how things were going, even though he knew he was not welcome. Dressed in simple clothes, John was not recognized by the staff and headed to the backstage area, where he discreetly observed. The situation at the hotel was about to get worse. The manager was dealing with a crisis, and in a moment of desperation he called John, asking for his help. He didn't know that John had been the owner of the hotel all along. With the hotel on the verge of collapse, John received the call with a mix of surprise and determination. "I'm on my way," he replied without revealing his identity. When John arrived, he was greeted with suspicious looks, but he soon made his presence known. He walked into the reception and, without hesitation, began to take control of the situation. With a combination of firmness and skill, he started solving the problems, adjusting reservations, and ensuring that the investors' meeting would be a success. The atmosphere in the hotel quickly changed as John, with his knowledge and experience, restored order. As the investors' meeting approached, the hotel's atmosphere shifted again. The quality of service improved noticeably, and the problems were resolved efficiently. However, John's secret had still not been revealed. Finally, when the meeting was about to begin, John walked into the main room where the manager was anxiously waiting. "We need to talk," he said, with a seriousness that caught everyone's attention. When the manager followed him to a more private area, John revealed his identity. "I am the owner of the Majestic Hotel." The manager, surprised and astonished, didn't know how to respond. "You? But how? John interrupted him with a calm smile. Yes, I am the owner. This was all planned so that I could see how the hotel was truly being managed. And I am here to correct the course and restore what was lost. John's words quickly spread through the hotel corridors, and the staff were left speechless upon discovering that the doorman they had underestimated was, in fact, the owner of the hotel. Richard, who had been watching the scene from afar, was in shock. John's revelation was a direct blow to his ego and his malicious schemes. The meeting with the investors went smoothly, and the majestic hotel regained its good reputation. John had restored order and shown everyone that true greatness lay not just in appearances but in integrity and dedication. The majestic hotel had regained its image and was operating with the same efficiency and elegance as before. John, now reconciled with the staff and guests, decided it was the right time for a final reflection on what had happened. On a bright morning, John called all the employees for a meeting in the main hall. The room was filled with murmurs and curious glances. Richard, who now felt isolated and ashamed, was among those present, his expression a mix of regret and anxiety. John entered the room with a calm posture and a serene smile. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice carrying a calmness that immediately captured everyone's attention. "I wanted to take this moment to share something important with you." Silence fell as John continued. "As you know, I am the owner of this hotel. Throughout all this time I've been observing, and although many of you may not have understood, my goal has always been to ensure that the Majestic is a place where excellence is not just an appearance but a true reality." He paused, looking at Richard, who returned his gaze with a look full of remorse. "I want to speak directly to you, Richard. I understand envy and the desire for recognition. I have also been through moments of insecurity and a desire to prove my worth. However, what I've learned over the years is that true success comes from honest work and integrity, not from manipulation or betrayal." Richard lowered his head in shame. John continued, his voice gentle but firm. "I could have chosen to punish you severely, but I decided that forgiveness would be the best way forward. We all make mistakes, and it's through them that we grow and learn. I want you to use this opportunity to reflect on your actions and to redeem yourself." The feeling in the room shifted. John's forgiveness not only surprised everyone but also brought a new perspective on how to deal with conflicts and challenges. Richard, emotional, raised his head and approached John. "I'm so sorry, John. I should never have acted the way I did. Thank you for giving me this chance." John smiled and placed a reassuring hand on Richard's shoulder. "Everyone deserves a second chance. The important thing is what we do with it." After the meeting, John organized a small ceremony to recognize the effort and dedication of all the employees. It was a moment of celebration, where unity and commitment to excellence were reaffirmed. The Majestic Hotel team renewed its dedication to quality and service, inspired by John's generosity and vision. As the sun set over the city, the Majestic Hotel gleamed with new vigor. John stood in the entrance hall, feeling at peace with the decision he had made. The hotel was more than just a symbol of luxury. It was now a place where true character and kindness were valued and recognized. The story of the doorman who was the hotel owner became a local legend, remembered as an example of humility, forgiveness, and the importance of never judging by appearances. John, with his exemplary character, had left an indelible mark not only on the hotel but also on the lives of all who had the privilege of knowing him. Thank you for following us this far. Leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories.